There is a creature living beneath the ocean floor that has no business existing. Not in the way people say that about things that are merely strange or impressive. In the way that, when you look at the complete picture of what this animal is, what it does, how it does it, what it's built from, how long it has been doing it, something in your reasoning process quietly refuses to accept it. The bobbit worm is not a deep-sea creature. It does not live in some inaccessible trench beyond the reach of human exploration. It lives in shallow tropical waters, in coral reefs, in the same warm, sunlit ocean floors where divers take photographs and children snorkel on vacation. It lives there in enormous numbers, and almost no one knows it exists. That is not an accident. The bobbit worm has spent 500 million years perfecting the art of existing without being seen. It buries itself in the seafloor with a precision that leaves no visible trace. Extends 5 antennae into the water column to sense the movements of passing fish, and then does something that the first researchers to film it on camera struggled to adequately describe. It strikes, not quickly for a worm, quickly for anything. A strike so fast and so violent that the prey is sometimes cut in half before it understands it has been attacked. Sometimes the prey is pulled directly into the sand and simply disappears. One moment a fish is swimming, the next moment it is gone, and the seafloor is still, and there is no evidence that anything happened at all. This has been happening continuously in shallow tropical waters around the world for longer than complex animal life has existed on land. Before anything else, you need to understand what you are actually looking at, because photographs rarely convey the scale correctly. The bobbit worm, Unus aphroditois, is a polychaete worm. That classification puts it in the same broad category as the earthworms in your garden. That is the first thing about this animal that doesn't make sense. An earthworm reaches maybe 30 centimeters, a large one, perhaps slightly more. The bobbit worm reaches 3 meters in length. 3 meters. Verified specimens, measured. Unverified accounts from researchers and divers place some individuals closer to 4. It is the width of a human thumb for its entire length. It is iridescent. Its body catches light in shifting purples, greens, and browns that make it look less like an animal and more like something that was designed to be looked at. In the few seconds between emergence and burial, before it pulls itself back into the sediment, it has the visual quality of something imagined, rather than evolved. Its body is composed of hundreds of segments, each segment bearing paired appendages called parapodia, small, bristled paddles that it uses to anchor itself inside its burrow. The bristles on some species of polychaete worms can penetrate human skin and break off inside the wound, delivering a chemical irritant. The bobbit worm's bristles are capable of the same. Divers who have accidentally made contact with one describe a burning sensation that persists for hours. But the bristles are not the weapon. They are just the body. The weapon is the jaw. The bobbit worm's jaw, called a pharynx, technically, because it is an internal structure that it everts outward during a strike, is made of a material that material scientists have spent years trying to fully characterize. It is composed of a biological composite of proteins and minerals that produces an edge harder than most human-made cutting tools at the microscopic scale. Electron microscopy of the jaw structure reveals a cross-section of interlocking fibers.
Hands down the most terrifying hunter in the sea, despite being, a worm.
Arranged in a geometry that distributes impact force across the entire structure, rather than concentrating it at any single point. It does not chip. It does not crack under repeated high-velocity impact. It is, by the standards of biological material science, almost unreasonably well-engineered. The geometry of the jaw is a set of 5 interlocking plates that close from multiple directions simultaneously, not like scissors and not like teeth, but like a trap that collapses inward from every angle at once. There is no direction from which prey can push against all 5 plates simultaneously. The physics of the closure make escape geometrically impossible once contact is made. When it strikes, the jaw everts, turns inside out and outward, in under 4 milliseconds. 4 milliseconds. The strike velocity is sufficient to sever the spine of a fish in a single motion. Researchers studying high-speed footage of bobbit worm strikes have measured the acceleration as among the highest recorded for any biological structure executing a predatory movement. It is not fast for an invertebrate. It is fast compared to almost everything. And then the jaw inverts again, retracting back inside the body, pulling whatever it has caught inward, into the worm's body, into the sediment, into the darkness below. The bobbit worm does not chase prey. It does not stalk. It does not patrol. It digs a burrow into the seafloor sediment, a burrow that can extend 1 meter straight down, and it waits. The waiting is not passive. The worm extends 5 sensory appendages, called antennae, into the water column above the burrow entrance. These antennae are chemosensory and mechanosensory simultaneously, detecting both the chemical signatures of nearby animals and the pressure waves created by their movement. The sensitivity of these sensors is sufficient to distinguish between a fish swimming within striking range and the general background movement of water currents. When the sensors register a target, the response is not deliberate. It does not decide to strike. The strike simply happens. The neural pathway from sensor activation to jaw aversion is direct and nearly instantaneous, a reflex arc of such efficiency that it bypasses any meaningful processing delay. The worm does not think about the strike. The strike simply happens. What happens next depends on the prey. Smaller fish are pulled directly into the burrow in a single motion, disappearing into the sediment entirely. Larger fish are gripped, held, and pulled progressively deeper as the worm uses its parapodia to anchor against the burrow walls and apply sustained downward force. Fish that struggle are gripped harder. The jaw structure is designed to tighten under lateral force, meaning that the prey's own escape attempts increase the pressure of the grip. Some prey are cut completely in half by the initial strike. This is not a malfunction. Researchers believe that for larger, faster fish that might otherwise escape, the strike is calibrated to cause immediate incapacitation rather than capture. A fish cut in half at the spine is not going anywhere. The seafloor shows nothing. No blood dispersed in the water. No struggle visible from above. The sediment settles back into stillness. If you were watching from the surface, you would see a reef that appears perfectly undisturbed. In 2009, staff at the Blue Reef Aquarium in Newquay, England, began noticing something wrong with one of their coral reef display tanks. Fish were disappearing, not dying, disappearing. Here one day, gone the next, with no remains, no sign of predation, no explanation. The coral in the tank was being damaged, pieces broken off in ways that suggested something large was moving through it at night. The staff searched the tank repeatedly. They found nothing. They began dismantling the coral structures piece by piece, searching for a disease, a water quality problem, anything that might explain what was happening to their fish. After several weeks of disappearing animals and unexplained coral damage, they finally found it. A bobbit worm, living inside the tank's substrate, 1 meter and 20 centimeters long. It had arrived, the staff concluded, as a juvenile, microscopic, invisible, hitchhiking inside a piece of live rock imported for the display. It had grown inside the tank, in the dark beneath the substrate, for an unknown period of time, feeding on the fish above it entirely undetected. They named it Bury. Bury was removed carefully, photographed extensively, and rehomed. The story was covered internationally. Most of the coverage treated it as a curiosity, a funny aquarium story, the monster that hid in plain sight. What the coverage mostly missed is the implication. If a bobbit worm can grow to over 1 meter inside a monitored aquarium tank in a substrate that staff examined regularly without being detected for long enough to kill an unknown number of fish, what is living beneath the substrate of wild reefs that no one is monitoring? How many burrows are there in a square kilometer of healthy Indo-Pacific reef? How many fish disappear into the sediment every night in waters that tourists visit every morning? Nobody knows. There is no reliable estimate. The bobbit worm belongs to the polychaete worms, a group with a fossil record extending back to the Cambrian period, more than 500 million years ago. This means the bobbit worm's basic body plan predates fish. It predates land plants. It predates almost every animal group that currently exists on Earth. The jaw structure specifically has been found in Cambrian fossil deposits. The interlocking 5-plate jaw that materials scientists find so remarkable is not a recent innovation. It is not an adaptation that emerged in response to modern prey. It existed before the fish it now hunts had evolved. The jaw came first. The prey evolved into something the jaw was already equipped to handle. In 500 million years, the fundamental design has not changed in any significant way, not through 5 mass extinction events, not through the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs, not through the ice ages, the oxygen crises, the continental shifts that rearranged the entire ocean floor multiple times. The bobbit worm's body plan encountered all of those events and responded by remaining exactly what it already was. That is not inertia. That is not evolutionary stagnation. That is a design so comprehensively correct for its purpose that 500 million years of environmental pressure could find nothing meaningful to improve. Every predator that emerged during that 500 million years either went extinct, changed beyond recognition, or learned to avoid the seafloor. The bobbit worm just kept hunting. Here is where the facts become something harder to categorize. The maximum size of the bobbit worm is not established. The 3-meter specimens that have been measured are almost certainly not the largest individuals alive. The worm continues to grow throughout its life, and because it spends that life buried in sediment 1 meter below the seafloor surface, the largest individuals are also the most invisible. We have no reliable method for finding and measuring the oldest, deepest burrowing individuals. We do not know how long bobbit worms live. Polychaete worm lifespans vary enormously across species, from months to decades. For Eunice aphroditois specifically, no reliable lifespan estimate exists. Given the growth rate implied by the largest observed specimens and the continuous nature of polychaete growth, some researchers have suggested individual lifespans measured in decades. A single worm in a single burrow, hunting the same patch of reef for 20 or 30 years. We do not know precisely how they find their burrow sites or how they excavate them. We do not fully understand how the sensory antennae process environmental information or what the threshold for a strike decision actually is at the neural level. We do not know their reproductive behavior in any detail. Bobbit worms have almost never been observed mating in the wild. For an animal this large, this common, and this accessible, living in shallow water on reefs that humans visit every day, the gap in our knowledge is remarkable. It persists because the animal is so good at being invisible that even directed study struggles to observe it in its natural state without disturbing the behavior being observed. The deep ocean hides its monsters behind pressure and darkness and impossible depth. The Arctic keeps its apex predator behind walls of cold that most of the world will never experience. The rainforest conceals its most dangerous bird in ecosystems that most humans will never enter. The bobbit worm asks for none of that. It is beneath the sand of warm, clear turquoise water. It is in the reefs where the water is 20 degrees, and the visibility is 15 meters, and the sunlight reaches the bottom and illuminates everything. It is there, right now. In its burrow, 1 meter below the surface of the sediment, 5 antennae extended into the water, waiting with the patience of something that has been waiting since before patience had a name. A jaw older than fish, a strike faster than thought. Something swimming above it has no idea. Something swimming above it has 30 seconds. Something swimming above it has 4 milliseconds. And then the seafloor is still, and the water is clear, and the sunlight reaches the bottom, and everything looks exactly as it did before. Nothing happened. Nothing is ever visible. That is the whole point.